on. Crazy.
Yeah, crazy.
Day.
I know. I feel like one of those munchkins on Wizard of Oz when the Wicked Witch of the West was killed. Just dancing around. So you just can't believe that it actually happened.
So you were just as shocked as everybody else. I mean, any indication that this was coming down the pipe?
Well, you thought maybe with federal authorities being involved that it was a possibility that they would get him eventually. I didn't think it would happen this fast. But it says a lot to his ego and the size of his ego that he would wait to get elected as president just to prove that he could do it again and then resign 4 days later when the heat got a little bit turned up.
So you mentioned the federal pressure. I mean, is your impression then this has to do with the federal investigation that now has sort of worked its way up potentially to his number 2? Is that
I think so.
it?
Yeah, I just think the money trail was starting to get too close to him, and he's a smart guy. He's savvy. He's been in that position for a long time, so he definitely had some exit strategies in place. And he probably got to the point where, like, I need to make a decision. I need to resign with grace, with some dignity, as opposed to getting arrested and having handcuffs and having that image plastered all around the world.
But he doesn't want to seem to give up control. And in his statement, he said, "Since I shall not be a candidate, I am therefore now free from the constraints that elections inevitably impose. I shall be able to focus on driving far-reaching, fundamental reforms that transcend our previous efforts." I mean, very poetic,
yes.
And I interpreted that as, okay, I'm not your president, but I'm going to still be as powerful, if not more.
I interpreted it as he didn't actually write that. Somebody else wrote it for him. His visions of grandeur are just incredible. I think he's a bit delusional with some of the claims that he makes, and if he couldn't do that as president, why can he do it now without the constraints? That's what I find confusing. I mean, you had all the power then. Now you're going to be able to implement all this stuff without any power whatsoever?
Right, and that's what he seems to want to do right now. He wants to publicize compensation of the president and the executive committee members. He wants to impose term limits. He wants to reduce how many. I mean, the laundry list was huge. Why didn't he do that as president?
Yeah, good question. I think now he just wants to end his whole thing, his whole story on a good note, on a high note. He wants to be the hero of this whole thing and bring it all together. Like, nah, I mean, I wasn't aware of it. There were some bad people underneath me. But it's eventually going to be exposed once the federal authorities get all their stuff together, that he is, in fact, the top of this snake. He's the one controlling the rest of the body.
What's the power of the sponsors? I mean, you heard, Coca-Cola saying, okay, we want to have FIFA clean house. I mean, do they have the power to sort of pressure FIFA to clean house like this?
Oh, no question. I mean, there's $1 billion in reserve for a company that is a nonprofit. And they didn't get there without having sponsors involved, having TV deals involved. So I think if Coca-Cola came in, Adidas came in, Budweiser came in and said, hey, something has to change. Even if you are clean, maybe you are as clean as you say you are, the perception around you is very negative. FIFA is very negative right now. And moving forward, if you want to sponsor your biggest event, then you need to step down.
And it seems like Domenico Scala is going to oversee all these measures. Can you tell us anything about him and sort of like, do you believe that he can actually implement this? Is he a good one?
Well, it's hard to say whether he's a good one or not, but the spotlight's going to be shining so bright on this whole re-election and who's going to be in charge and just FIFA in general that I think he's got to play everything straight.
Who's going to be the next president?
Well, I'm putting my name in the hat.
Kidding.
Of course, why wouldn't I?
You are?
Yeah, why not?
How do you do that?
I don't. I
like,
actually
hey.
do not know how you do that. But since FIFA seems to make up rules as they go, I figured why not. But there are a few guys out there. UEFA president Michel Platini was a former player for France, got a lot of experience. Sunil Gulati is the president of U.S. Soccer and is executive committee for FIFA from our region here in CONCACAF. So those are just a few names of plenty of guys. But it just depends if people want a complete upheaval of the whole thing to get fresh blood from all the way from the bottom up to the top.
I was going to say, I mean, can you bring in a banker?
Sure, why not?
The next CEO of a major company? I mean, could they run this a lot better?
Though they do have a reputation of being corrupt as well. So we just have to make sure we figure out how we want to play this.
So looking at FIFA and sort of the internal workings, who has the most power now that Blatter's stepping aside?
Well, it's hard to say because now I think it's going to be pushed to different regions. So Sunil Gulati, the president here at U.S. Soccer, and the executive committee members will probably have a little bit more power. The UEFA president, Michel Platini, is on the tip of everybody's tongue. UEFA is very strong. Obviously, it has all the European nations underneath it. So he'd probably be the guy, but I think they're all reluctant to take that power and to seize it until the investigations have played out.
Take us a little bit behind the scenes in terms of the country's struggles. I mean, we had David Cameron from the UK and the US calling for Blatter to not get reelected on Friday. Russia, though, was behind Blatter. What's the geopolitical interplay within FIFA?
No, that's a great question. It's a chess game because, as much as we don't want sports to be mixed in with politics, it very much is when our presidents and leaders and world leaders are getting involved. I can't really say for sure with regard to how much it influences politics, but when you think about the 2018 World Cup, it being held in Russia, 2022 in Qatar, you have to think that both of those tournaments are now on the table to be able to say, are we really going to push forward on that? Because in the Olympics in Russia didn't come off very well. Qatar has plenty of human rights violations that continue to extend. People are dying trying to build these stadiums to have that infrastructure. So I'd like to think that's probably that political posturing to make sure that these World Cups are still held, because they're big-time money makers.